We don't have a lot of data on two-row barley. The whole industry just took a deep breath a few years ago and decided, okay, this year we're 6-row, but next year we're going to be 2-row, and we're going to be 2-row for the foreseeable future. Most of the data that we accumulated on nitrogen rates or any fertilizer rates in barley had been with 6-row. And it's not reasonable to assume that they would react the same. We don't know for sure. We had two different barley varieties out here, Synergy and Genesis. And they were recommended to us by the barley industry as two the premier that they would accept as malting quality. We put 5 different N rates out here. We've had a 0 with no added nitrogen, and 40 and 80, 120 and 160. The 120 and the 160 are probably pushing it some, but another thing we don't know about 2-row is that word on the street says that it generally has a lower protein than what our 6-row barley does. Can we push the nitrogen rate to get more yield profitably, or does that put us over the edge on protein and kick us out of the malting? We don't know that, and so that's what those N rates will tell us. In Logan Center is transitional no-till. It's only been a no-till, I think, for about the 2nd year, and it was in dry-edible beans last year. And so there's a nitrogen credit that comes from dry-edible beans. On the other hand, the Valley City site's been a no-till for probably over 30 years, and so there's a no-till credit when you go after that. So I'm going to take you backwards through the nitrogen rate plots on one single variety. This is a Genesis. It tends to be taller and it tends to be a little bit later. One of the things that is discouraging about the higher N rates, especially with this variety, is the stems are remaining green for a long time, probably at least a week later than what it would be with a lower N rate, and you'll see that in a minute. So if we were combining this for real, we probably wouldn't be doing it this week. We'd probably have to wait till next week, and then with the weather, you never know if you're going to get hail, so earlier is always better. If we look at this variety here, this is Synergy. This is that same rate that we saw on the green stems in the Genesis, but this, even at the high N rate, the 160 pounds of N, the stems are ready to harvest. This is the tallest one. In the plots themselves, there's a little bit of lodging where the stalks have fallen over. You can see a gap now and then, and you get that the higher N rate that you go. Here, just backing it off, about 40 pounds of N per acre. You still have about the same height, you still have about the same look to the top of it, but you don't see any lodging. And then the other variety, the Genesis, the one that's a little bit later, we didn't see green stems in it either. Now once we back off of that 120 pound rate and go to 80, which is here, then the height of the plant is a lot lower. The number of heads is somewhat less, so I wouldn't expect quite as good a yield with this 80 pound N rate as we did with the 120. And then if we back it up another 40, so this is a 40 pound N rate, our height is definitely different than what we just saw in the 80. There's not as many tillers. We wouldn't expect as many tillers with a lower N rate, and I would expect the yield to be lower on this one. And then the lowest yield we have, and it shouldn't be much surprise, is the one that doesn't have any additional nitrogen, and that's this one. This is our check plot, the one that has 0 added N. Now, 0 N in this region doesn't mean that there's 0 N. We know from sampling in the spring that we had 20, 30 pounds of residual nitrogen to 2 feet. What we've seen so far in the site at Valley City is that the yield of our 0 N is less than half of what we have in the more ideal nitrogen rates.